What in the absolute hell is going on? That essentially is the question I was asking myself and my team whenever I saw what was going on with Battlefield 2042. On the channel, I have talked about how actually they're doing more content than expected, how there has been some good buzz, even though the overall situation for that game has remained pretty damn grim. What I didn't expect is that the game now is actually above its launch player numbers. And while those launch player numbers were certainly not the best situation for the series, what's interesting is that now that the free weekend is over, those numbers are still staying really, really high, which perhaps shows that this may not be a flash in the pan. Because at the end of the day, if there was a free weekend and a discount in the game, but the game still was not working for people, well, why the hell would they still be playing it, right? Something seems to have changed. Why are there videos popping up about the game being back? And when we actually look at the numbers, why is there still a decently mixed sentiment going on in those Steam reviews? So to actually give you the numbers, right? It's reached player numbers of 104,475 compared to a launch high of 105,397. And if you were to ask why, well, the short answer to that question is there was a free weekend that ran from the 12th to the 16th, and the game was discounted to $10 on Steam during that period of time. But if you're to move one day on from the end of that free weekend, you see the number is 102,662. Still a gargantuan number, and yes, while it has fallen a bit as we've moved into Wednesday, the point is this is an absolutely stunning reversal of situations. And actually now, 8 days after the launch of all of this, the team are having server capacity outages happen in the middle of the day. Yes, now that's the sort of thing that can happen around the launch of a game, or perhaps around the launch of a very hyped new season. But that happening because of a snowball of interest after, that is almost unheard of. Especially in the context of it being because of demand, not necessarily unexpected bugs or something breaking, or even, I don't know, somebody just pulling the plug out of a server, which seems pretty unrealistic. But of course, you're not just here to learn about some numbers, you're also here to work out why the hell this is going on, should you care about it, and should you actually try putting some of your time into this game now that you're hearing some positive buzz. And if you want to support the reporting that we do daily, of course, subscribe to the channel, and also you can pick up the art and the making of The Pale Beyond, which is the video game that our studio developed on store.bellular.games. It's one of the best ways to help us out. It is an awesome big hardcover games art book, and of course you can check out the game itself over on Steam. Now then, the recap to date. This is a game that rather hastily, by some accounts under a year, was reworked into a regular Battlefield game by DICE and their partner studios after the initial plan for 2042 absolutely fell through. And that's expressed in a few different things. The 128 player maps sucked. The performance of the game broadly sucked. There was no campaign, which I would argue doesn't really matter for a core Battlefield game, but anyway, because most of them in Battlefield have been pretty weak. The specialist system, which basically was just turning things to be quite character-driven, seemingly for the Hazard Zone mode, which was the extraction shooter. And then we heard some reports that this had actually been scaled back from apparently some sort of really large Battle Royale-driven project. Essentially, the development of this game was a sheer disaster, and for the company that made it, DICE, it represented a period where they were a revolving door, losing humongous amounts of talent with a massive, above-industry, like average attrition rate. Loads of real experienced people left. So it's absolutely no wonder that the game was a total shit show. And that is obviously what led to it being mostly negative in terms of its Steam user reviews. After this disaster, some things changed. One thing was pretty major. Senior leadership at the studio responsible for Battlefield changed significantly. It was actually completely restructured under Vince Zampella. Vince Zampella is a fairly major name in the shooter space. Of course, he was heavily involved with one-time Battlefield competitor Call of Duty when, he was doing Infinity Ward then. Respawn Entertainment happened. He's involved with the Titanfall games, Star Wars Fallen Order, Apex Legends. Broadly speaking, in a period of time where Electronic Arts were having nothing but misses and misses and misses, what happened? Respawn showed up with the goods and kind of led the way, not only in terms of them having good games, but also in terms of Zampella being able to shield Respawn from a lot of the bullshit that was going on at EA in and around that time. What essentially happened is they realized, the place free of bullshit that seemingly this Zampella guy is leading. Zampella, of course, actually being a very major figure at Electronic Arts as a part of their acquisition deal. Essentially, he got way more power and seems to have been working very closely with Laura Miele, who is their, I think, like head of studios. She's basically been a pretty big success story at the company, as a bunch of EA titles have ended up surprisingly not being shit. Okay, number 2 then. The other thing that changed is they decided to delay all live service content releases until the core plan for the game had been changed and most of the bugs had been fixed. So, with that happening, DICE then got to work. They spent until June of 2022 working to rebuild their production pipeline, developing a new plan, and preparing for the live service of the game in line with the complaints gathered since the launch. Now, for players, what that actually meant is that from November to June, there was minimal going on with the game, and in spite of developers posting things and players getting previews of, new or amended features and bug fixes, it kind of felt like it was a dead and hopeless situation, especially as players looked at Steam charts and saw nobody's playing this game. In no way will EA, being a company that wants money, put more effort into this, so I'm not going to put more effort into it. Screw it, the game is dead to me. What happened after June 2022, though, is 5 seasons of game content followed, and they followed fairly consistently, with each having a new map and a rework for at least one of the existing maps in the game to be more in line with fan requests, alongside new vehicles, weapons, and gadgets. During this time, they shuttered the Hazard Zone project, right? So the Hazard Zone mode just left to die because, frankly, nobody wanted it anyway. Then Battlefield Portal, which actually was really awesome. Battlefield Portal maps and weapons were then translated over to the core matchmaking modes, and the decision was made to target all maps past Season 2 for 64 players, rather than 128 players. And for many longtime Battlefield fans, this move to 128 players did not work for how this game played, and 64 absolutely does feel better. So, what is this stuff? What this stuff is a bunch of good changes and more content coming to the game. What it is not is flashy, and it wasn't particularly loud because, let's be real, it's not like there was a humongous quantity of people kind of there in June 2022. Well, okay, you actually do have some before that, but if you take a look at like these January through to April numbers, you would not be forgiven for thinking it's time to just totally abandon the game. Yet, what do we actually see as the year 2022 into 2023 happens? We actually see spikes with seasonal launches in the Steam data. We see those spikes actually do lead to a slightly higher new baseline. We then have a free weekend on the 1st of December that then leads to quite a bit more healthy of a new baseline. New season comes out, all this stuff's going well, we have a little bit of attrition, and then bam, the numbers absolutely explode. The chart basically goes near vertical for a few days. And what's been really interesting about this is that they haven't abandoned it after Season 4. The reason I say that is because what was included in the sort of premium edition of the game was like up to Season 4 of like battle passes and content, right? So they had an obligation to ship 4 seasons. And that kind of meant that as soon as they were done shipping those 4 seasons, they would have been well within their rights to be like, right, this is what our players are telling us it is. Dead game. So move on to the next thing. But they didn't do this. Actually, more seasons happened. Season 5 comes out, having a final reworked map be included. Then there's a breather season of rerun events and modes for 6 weeks. And then, bringing you up to the present day and what's led to these numbers exploding, we have Season 6. Season 6 is an entirely new season for this game, one that seemingly wasn't part of the original plan, and one that players did not expect, because we thought that EA, being very, you could say, mercenary, would just decide to cut their losses and move on to the next thing, essentially leaving all the people who purchased Battlefield holding the bag, feeling a bit stupid for having made their purchase. Now, there are some criticisms here. There is only only the same amount of new content added compared to the new plus rework content of prior seasons. This season is also coming with underlying reworks to many vehicles in the game that are following on from a complete weapon rework in the last season. So there are definitely some quibbles here and there, but overall people are happy enough. And this map is one specifically designed to give people the locker/metro experience. Do you remember grinding Metro in Battlefield 3? I certainly do. That's one of the experiences that this patch has given you. And then the story you would think goes that within Season 6 we have a free weekend and the player base rejoiced, grew mightily, rewarding DICE for all the hard work and the changes. Now here's what's interesting. The players are there. They're clearly enjoying the game enough to keep on playing it, making one think that now it is the redemption and the engoodening of Battlefield 2042. But dive into Steam, and we see that recent reviews are only 57% positive, and that overall the game is sitting at a 41% in terms of user reviews. Now, in fairness, it basically is irrelevant how good this game is from this point onward. They have a total of 161,000 Steam reviews that are overall having it be mixed at 41%. To move the needle, you would have to be so incredibly good that the only thing that they can really hope to have be relevant is recent reviews. So why are those still missed? Well, 2042 still is not what a chunk of the Battlefield player base want, and thankfully, they're quite vocal when it comes to talking about what they want. So, what this free weekend does is it gives people a ramp on that minimizes risk, it lets them find some level of fun, and find out, is this a game that they are or are not interested in? For some, they're trying it out and liking it. Here's a post here where somebody said, I bought the game after playing the free weekend, played it in the first month on release through EA Play, didn't want to buy it because I wasn't a fan of the beta, hated it, never touched it until this weekend, had a blast. Gotta give props, etc., etc. And the community manager basically says, thanks, appreciate it. So that's really good. For some people, though, it's not exactly like that, because there are still things they feel are missing. And of course, for many people, that's the likes of there being no single player. Now, I would argue with the single player that, I mean, honestly, I don't really think single player matters. But then again, maybe I'm just some strange boomer who's used to playing Battlefield 2, right? Where, we didn't have a single player campaign because it was a multiplayer shooter and we thought that would be a waste of development. So then, whenever Battlefield 3 and 4 had their single player campaigns and they were honestly pretty, well, forgettable at best, you do just kind of wonder, why did you spend so much effort when, your core thing is being a PvP shooter? But anyway, some people still do have lingering concerns. One of the things that I really did notice, though, when I dived into the reviews is loads of people are just having crashes, right? Even between some of the positive meme reviews and stuff like that, there is just a whole bunch of people being like, cool, validating file simulator, cannot play. So it does seem that this release has, in terms of its Steam perception, been dragged down a little bit by bugs, issues, crashes, that kind of thing. Okay. What we can say, though, is based on this playership graph, they now do have an opportunity if they continue development for this game. I think we can all see that by the player numbers, that's probably worth it. And for keeping Battlefield relevant as a brand, it's almost certainly worth it, because 100,000 concurrence is really damn healthy for a game on Steam. Now then, let's talk about the future of the game. That's where it gets interesting. So we're 2 years into the life of this game, and we do not have confirmation on whether there will be a Season 7 or any other content past that. As a series, at least since Battlefield 4, they have had 2-year life cycles for these games, but there are suggestions this may not hold. So, creator Lossy found that there is basically Amazon Prime promotional stuff scheduled through the next 12 months, right? Which does kind of make you think. I mean, it's not a smoking gun, but if you pair it with some other elements, I think there are maybe some implications that we can draw. Number one, it really doesn't look like we're getting a new Battlefield game this year. So if their plan is a Battlefield game every 2 years, that's not obviously a plan that is happening. What it does sound like, though, is that Electronic Arts have decided that they want to throw every major gun that they have into making sure this series doesn't have another 2042. Because, of course, 2042 followed Battlefield 5. Battlefield 5, a game that, while yes, at one point was clobbering 2042 in the player numbers, 5 did have issues at its launch. It had design changes, it had stuff that people didn't exactly like. So if it's at least a year until a new Battlefield game, we can kind of take a look at what okay, some of the annoying CEO speak from their CEO is, but also what the material changes to the development process that we actually know about are. So TLDR from Andrew Wilson, the CEO of EA, comes down to, yes, this is probably going to be some sort of Battlefield, live service platform thing. Maybe I'll have battle passes, maybe I'll have microtransactions. I mean, definitely I'll have microtransactions. Whatever it'll be, it will certainly be a big new video games product, right? That much kind of obvious. But as a game, could things be different? That's where it gets interesting. Number one, Vince Zampella is now in charge of Battlefield as a whole. That means that there is one key decision maker, one person who can direct the vision for the entire product line. Zampella is also someone directly involved with EA management. He himself is not just, he ran Respawn. No, he is actually very important within the corporate structure of EA. And that does mean that he's not just the guy that they can tell to go and do something stupid if he thinks it's stupid. He does actually have the hard power, for the most part, to say, no, this would be a bad move for us Electronic Arts to make. He also is seemingly someone who can permanently requisition a core element of Criterion and bring them aboard properly after their work of supporting 2042 and building, of course, Firestorm for Battlefield 5. So there is Vince Zampella's new Battlefield Kingdom. Another interesting thing, though, is this from David Sinclair. I'll just read it. Well, hello again, Battlefield community. I'm back. This time round, things really are very different, brackets in a good way, and I'm super eager to make the future of Battlefield brighter than, it's brighter than ever. Information on what this means in detail will spill as time goes on, but rest assured I'm going to listen to feedback and woes and, champion the idea of a game that you would love to play. And I thought this was quite interesting. Now, obviously, a situation like this won't happen for everybody. As for David, he was a longtime producer at the company, and it is just interesting that he said, I'm back. Things are very different in a good way. I am back at DICE. Things are different in a good way. What does that mean? Well, we heard all of the things that were leading to DICE being a revolving door, all the BS that was happening in and around the, just the development of 2042. You do wonder, in this new world where Vince Zampella seems to rule the roost for the Battlefield franchise, have things actually changed? Because somebody is in control of it that actually has the power to flat out change things and also has a proven track record of shipping excellent games. Next then, Ridgeline Games. One of the biggest critiques of Battlefield games for years is that they wasted developer time and resources making single-player campaigns that I suppose were technically supposed to fight with Call of Duty, but never really stood up to Call of Duty. In 2042, they made no single-player content, and a seemingly silent population suddenly became extremely loud and voiced their displeasure at this. Now, I have to wonder if this was just a convenient baton to bash DICE with, because sure, I guess some people would maybe like that single-player content, but if the multiplayer was awesome and was what Battlefield should be, maybe people wouldn't give a shit that there's no single player, because historically, yes, I know people like, say, Bad Company, but historically that's not been the most core part of the Battlefield franchise. But either way, what's happened here is that going forwards, there's actually an entire studio dedicated to single player content for Battlefield games. And for that, the Halo co-creator, Marcus Leto, is, he's building that. He's building a whole studio for this purpose, and as of February 2023, they have been working directly with DICE staff to integrate everything together for a future single-player, form of content. So that's kind of interesting. Next, then, we've got Ripple Effect, formerly known as DICE LA. So, Ripple Effect built Portal for Battlefield 2042, and Portal was a bit weird. It was kind of misunderstood with launch. It was pigeonholed as an access point for a very small selection of classic maps and weapons, but in reality, what Portal was a player-driven server browser for 2042. It had very strong custom editor features for making different modes, management tools, that sort of thing. And it also had the option of semi-permanent hosting added after launch. Now, it's not had much new support otherwise than, just ensuring that the seasonal maps can all function within it. But what Battlefield Portal represents, alongside it being an infrastructure that's allowed DICE to ship server-side fixes for the game without title updates, what it really represents is a investment in the future of Battlefield, because this is Battlefield with loads of customization, including, say, like legacy maps and that kind of thing. That's actually quite big. Now, server management, that's great as a way to implement game modes and recreate gameplay from classic games. This could be one way to unite a very disparate Battlefield community into one game experience, right? So the people who want to play 1942, they're maybe not the people who want to play Battlefield 5, and they're maybe not the same people who want to play Battlefield 1, right? So giving each of these groups a way to still play their game within a broader concept of what Battlefield is, that could be quite a mindshare win. So you just have to wonder, with the creation of Portal, like what tools, technologies, workflows, pipelines have been created, because Portal does seem like just a kind of real killer feature, even though obviously with 2042 broadly being a disaster, we were not able to fully realize the benefits of Portal's existence. And I suppose finally we may wonder, what is the value in 2042 to them now? And I think it's pretty simple. Number one, now that they're actually getting people back, it's really good for just keeping people caring about Battlefield. Yes, it'll make the money. That money certainly will be a good thing, but like everything going on in 2042 is basically a systemic testing ground. This is where they get to iterate rapidly and rapidly. It's where they have built this new production pipeline for seasonal content that's helping to set expectations going forward. New systems and infrastructure can be fully tested and weathered, including the recent confirmation of the first kernel-level anti-cheat solution for the Battlefield series, that is going to be coming out in an upcoming update to 2042, rather than, say, a big new feature for the new Battlefield game. So in short, 2042 gets to be what DICE almost never had, and that is breathing room to work on fundamental design stuff, to, I guess, redesign everything, and to, most importantly, actually get feedback from players and have enough of a span of time that they can properly action on that feedback. Because if you actually think about stuff for DICE, it's been a Battlefield every 2 years. At one point, they even wanted yearly Battlefield titles. Remember Battlefield Hardline? What a mistake that was, right? Like, this franchise has been quite misused. Even like they've had great successes, like with Battlefield 1, and then have managed to totally fumble the bag after that, you know? So we're not out of the woods. It's not all perfect. And this is not suddenly the 9 out of 10 amazing Battlefield experience that everyone would want it to be. And even though there are loads of people playing the game, there are still some crashes on launch and stuff like that people are, are reporting. So this isn't me coming to you and saying Battlefield is fixed now, Battlefield is awesome, go buy it. But it is saying this is actually something that we don't really we don't really consider as a dead game anymore, because by the numbers, it is not. It is not a dead game by the numbers, and even after the free weekend, those player numbers have held. So as for me personally, yeah, whenever I fix my PC, I'll play some Battlefield. Because I've been a fan of this franchise, as I said, since really Battlefield 2 was my proper entry point. Of course, liked 3 and 4 a lot. Enjoyed 1, even though it was a sort of different experience. 5 was one of those great things for me where, as a game, I thought 5 was actually pretty damn good, but as a product, I thought 5 was, really not as good. And then, of course, the 2042, it's just like, it broke, it finally snapped. Because I guess a bunch of suits wanted to do a 128 player battle royale thing, and then they wanted it to be an extraction shooter, and then they wanted, to get the operator based monetization, so they changed the class, all of those things. Whereas now it's under new management, and it actually seems to be yielding results. So that is why Battlefield 2042, while not all better, while not a totally fixed game, is in a far, far, far more healthy state, to the point where loads of people join up during a free weekend, and once that free weekend ends, the player numbers still stay high, indicating that a lot of people actually did buy that game. Pretty impressive stuff. Gotta be honest with you, I did not see this one coming. I thought that with a chart for the, for its first half looks like this, I thought they would have just done 4 seasons and ran off to the next game. But no, they've been rewarded for sticking with it, and certainly with these numbers, I think they would be totally insane to not do like a season 7 or 8, right? I mean, come on, they got to keep this going. It just makes sense. Like, this is their first bit of major good news that is going to permeate the gaming headlines, around the internet. the sooner they can confirm more content support, absolutely the better. And if that is not already greenlit, I've got to imagine that there is somebody trying to fight for it to be greenlit within Electronic Arts right now. Let me know what you think. Of course, if you want to support what we're doing, you can subscribe to the show. I'm pretty much here every day breaking down the latest comings and goings in gaming. So if you just want some reliable sort of info and entertainment, I will be here to provide that for you. And if you want to support what we're doing in a more tangible sense and also get yourself the art book for our first video game, The Pale Beyond, you can do that at store.bellular.games, and you can check out the game on Steam. Thanks for everything, and I'll see you tomorrow.